Hi, this is Cory Parnell. We're going to get just a minute or so while I'm watching the participants logging on. So if you could bear with us, that'd be great. Kind of a little background though. Both Karen and I are safe from the current weather conditions out in Oregon. Adam, on the other hand, is battling, I think, rain and flooding. Is that what's going on, Adam? And you have no
Yeah,
electricity, no power,
it,
no.
yeah, last night we had a big windstorm last night, and there's no power for at least 40 miles up and down the North Oregon coast, as far as I know. So, but I'm in my car and I have cell service, and so here we are.
Yeah, well, you had to actually drive somewhere for cell service, didn't you?
Yep, I live on the coast, and without Wi-Fi, there is no cell service where I live. So, I am over a mountain and in town.
Oh man. Oh, great. And then Karen, you're safe out of Michigan, right?
Yes, safe if frozen.
Same here. We got our sub-zero in Minnesota for quite a while, and then yesterday, 44 degrees. I'm like, I don't know. The only good thing is all the ice buildup on my driveway is gone for a while.
I'm sure the weather will be great for the rest of the winter in Minnesota. No problem.
Yep. Well, that's what we tell ourselves. We keep saying it'll be nicer. Okay. Well, I think we're going to get going. Again, I appreciate everyone taking time out from a busy schedule, joining this webinar. I'm excited. A lot of current subjects that we'll address, and then a lot of activity both at the federal and state level. So first, I'd like to introduce Adam Smith, who's the Executive Director of the Marijuana Policy Project, or MPP, since July of 2025. Adam was the founder of the Craft Cannabis Alliance and the Alliance for Sensible Markets. He actually wrote legislation and spearheaded successful efforts to pass the nation's first three cannabis interstate commerce bills in Oregon, California, and Washington. He has organized and lobbied on behalf of the craft cannabis producers, managed ballot initiatives and candidate campaigns, negotiated collective bargaining agreements for Oregon nurses, and built and served in driving legislation action on issues ranging from labor rights to election reform. So very excited about Adam first joining MPP, but then also as time to kind of have a webinar conversation around a lot of important subjects going on. And then the other person I'd like to introduce is Karen O'Keefe. She's been on several webinars with us. Karen's a veteran, though. She's been a director of state policies with MPP since 2003. And one interesting thing she brought up with me is when she started, support for legalization was at 30% or below. So we've actually appreciate all your effort and support, and because we're a lot further along than we have been in the past. Karen, she manages MPP's grassroots and direct lobbying efforts in most of the state legislatures. Early in the day, she played significant roles in the medical marijuana campaigns in Montana and Rhode Island back in 2004, 2006. More currently, she's been involved in getting legislation for legalized marijuana, Connecticut, as well as Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania, and successful decriminalization campaigns in Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, and New Hampshire, and Rhode Island, and Vermont. Again, excited to have you guys on the webinar and looking forward to this conversation. We were meeting earlier, and kind of the elephant in the room, it wasn't on the invite, but the Trump signing the rescheduling bill. I'm going to throw it at you, Adam. Would have you kind of talk about that?
Sure. Well, it's interesting and chaotic. If he does this, and the rumor is he will sign an executive order tomorrow. We're not sure what that's going to look like. There are likely to be immediate lawsuits because there's a real question about whether he has the authority to unilaterally make this happen. But it seems like the federal agencies, jump when he says jump, and so maybe that he signs an executive order and the process starts again, and they can avoid lawsuits. Um, it is There's several good things that would happen if he moves cannabis to Schedule 3. It would open up pathways for research, for medical research. It will, as far as we can tell, it will put the cannabis industry, it will take the cannabis industry away from 280E. 280E is punitive tax rates that are paid by anyone or any company that sells a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 product. And it eliminates the chance to take normal business deductions. So that's been a real problem to help create a sustainable industry. And so we're hopeful on that. And then perhaps it will encourage the states to step up their efforts to provide access to medical cannabis to patients. The other side of this is that we're not entirely clear once it goes to Schedule 3. And under Schedule 1, the federal government couldn't regulate at all because it was illegal, and so they could not get involved in the regulation. And so the other side of this is if it does move to Schedule 3, what will the FDA, the DEA, and the DOJ do around regulation? Will it really open up access to medical cannabis, or will we see this used as a platform to really limit access to medical cannabis? Because most Schedule 3 substances are only distributed under strict controls. So a lot remains to be seen. And I think that the key here is going to be to some extent advocacy moving forward, right? I think that there are folks in the federal agencies that are not friendly to cannabis reform. And so I think there's going to be at least an incentive for some folks to try to use this as a way to narrow medical cannabis access. And I think that a big part of deciding that is going to be what kind of public response and public demand there is. And so we see this as a job for advocacy to take this as an opportunity to talk about how we can expand rather than make it so difficult for folks in the industry to operate that it really is limited down to a very few number of companies and possibly dominated by folks who aren't even in the industry yet. And so I think there's a lot that could happen. And predicting what this administration will do in the future is not, something I like to do because they're not totally predictable. But we will see, and hopefully we can push them in the right direction.
Yeah, and out of curiosity, how did this get kicked? Not kicked up, but initially reported that again recently. I mean, I had heard quite a while ago that Trump was going to do something. Do you know how this got resurfaced?
I think that this administration is somewhat chaotic, and I think they do things at moments when they think it'll be most advantageous for them politically. And so, trying to read their minds is difficult. But there's definitely been a lot of question about whether this is going to happen. For tax purposes, it would be advantageous if it happens before the end of this year. And so we will see. And I think that there's some thought to the timing on that to do it before the year turns and the tax year turns. I'm not sure. And again, I'm not 100% sure what their goals are. There are factions within this administration that are supportive of cannabis reform, and there are factions in this administration, including, the Heritage Foundation, which, wrote Project 2025, that has been very publicly against cannabis reform. And so, as often is the case with this administration, we're going to figure out who has the president's ear and how much influence they have. But I think while there's definitely room for celebration, and I see, the market price of the publicly traded cannabis companies has responded well to this potential news, certainly because of the tax advantages. We'll see long term if this turns into something that's good for the broader industry and for patients, or not. And I'm not sure anybody knows the answer to that yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. So on the party lines, has there been a big shift? Because I would say, Biden administration, they tried to move it forward. And then there was certain resistance. And now Trump's administration appears to be trying to move it forward. So is there like a dynamic shift within support of it because of who's putting it forward?
Well, I mean, the roadblock under Biden seemed to be DEA, and DEA is a very conservative agency historically.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that there's a chance that DEA may respond more proactively to the desires of a Republican administration. I think that's possible. Again, we're a little bit guessing here. And so we'll see if there's resistance from DEA if he signs this. I would imagine if he signs this, the agencies will jump into line, at least to make the move to actual Schedule 3, because they've changed so much of the leadership in the agencies, and so many people in charge are political, um, real political appointees in the pejorative sense, not just functionally. And so I think that the agencies tend to follow Trump's lead in a way that they might have resisted against Biden. But then again, once the paper is signed and they get the press to say, "Hey, we did this great thing," I'm not so sure that the White House itself will be really on top of what the policy outcomes are. And
Hmm.
so I think um, there is room for people to make trouble. And again, I'm not predicting this. I just want people to understand that I think that it could go in different directions. And I wish I had I wish I was the one person, out, with a definitive answer on exactly what's going to happen. But I think we need to be prepared. And I think that, especially in the case of medical, I think that a lot of this is going to depend on what does the advocacy look like? Are there mothers with kids with severe um, with severe seizure disorders that are standing up in public and talking about the need for access, and you know, or is that not, or do we not have a robust advocacy effort? And we're sort of hoping that the agencies do the right thing. And we don't know, but the next year, 2026, is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'll say it's I've been involved in the industry since 2014, and hard lefts and hard rights. There is no straight line involved in this industry, and if anybody's been able to predict it, I've never seen it in my involvement, and so yes, it'll be interesting. But then this kind of leads me to the my next question, which is, the uh, around hemp derived products and the movement in that at the federal level. And I think the disruption uh, that either is happening or could happen, or I guess, what are your take on that, Adam?
Well, I thought it was interesting that instead of outlawing hemp products immediately, that they set a year timetable. Um, that tells me that the folks who wanted to ban hemp products could not get that done immediately. They could not get it passed, as part of the larger bill, if they had cut it off immediately. So there's definitely some, or at least my assessment is that there's some support in Congress, and not insignificant support for figuring out a path forward. And so that's hopeful. I have to say that the hemp industry, which is not a monolith, right? There are responsible players, but there are too many irresponsible players in that industry, and because it was totally unregulated. Um, and I think that there are a lot of folks on the Hill who told a lot of legislators in 2018 and continue telling them, oh, what we're selling is not intoxicating, or it's really just CBD, or but we all know that there were gas station gummies and vape pens in convenience stores, and we are very much in favor of adults getting access to cannabinoids and to cannabis, but it needs to be grounded in public health and safety. And so, on the hemp side, the compromise, the path forward is really to set up a regulatory framework that guarantees that does real testing and real labeling. People know what they're buying and what they're ingesting. There's all kinds of problems with the unregulated market with pesticides and mold and fungus and heavy metals and synthetics in a lot of these products. And I think that became self-defeating. And again, it's not the whole hemp side, but it was enough players who were playing very loose with public health that really put it in a bad spot and made it very difficult to defend. And so we're going to see again over the next year whether we can get a regulatory bill through Congress that will allow folks access to cannabinoids regardless of the source. And if not, we're going to have a real economic problem on the hemp side. But states, it comes back to there are a lot of states. I mean, Tennessee, which whose legislature probably would never consider a marijuana program, right, has regulated hemp products. And so the word marijuana or cannabis is something that seems radical to in Republican controlled states, but just like in other states, the folks there's a great demand for cannabinoids. And I think that the thing to keep in mind and the thing politically to keep reminding folks is that this has never been a question about should there be cannabis or cannabinoids available to people or should there not, right? Cannabis has been available all over the country for generations. And so the only question is, will it be under regulatory control or will it be controlled by criminal organizations who will not only will not test and don't care about the labeling, but don't ask for ID, right? And so if we want to protect young people from access and we want to make sure that people who are accessing them, these products are safe, the only path forward is regulation. Banning it entirely is just a recipe for sending it all into the Wild West, and we don't know what's going to be out there and who it's going to be sold to.
Yeah. I've got a question here. And again, I did forget to mention this at the very beginning to the listeners. If you do have a question, please put it forward. We'd like to make this interactive if we're able to get to your questions. If not, we will follow up or I'll forward them on to Karen and Adam. But the question is, if legal at the federal level, will the states be able to arrest individuals for use?
Well, the states can only arrest people under state law, right? And so, but making it legal at the federal level does not force states to legalize, right? So the federal government can legalize, but Idaho can still put you in jail for 10 years for an ounce possession if they want. There's no, it may be legalized at the federal level, but it doesn't make it a constitutional right. And so the states have the right to prohibit and to regulate it pretty close to as they see fit under legalization. So having said that, there's a strong sense that if the federal government legalizes, particularly under a Republican administration, because it's mostly Republican-controlled states that are still enforcing prohibition, that if the federal government under a Republican administration or a Republican Congress legalizes, that'll be a big incentive for states to move legalization forward under state law. And I think that people living in states that remain under prohibition after the federal government legalizes, I think you will see a big a big increase in engagement of those folks saying, well, why not here? Why are we still arresting people here? So it would grease the skids and clear the path for state legalization, but it does not automatically nullify state law against possession or sale or anything like that.
Yep. I'm going to ask it. Its specific statute, it looks like allows 21 USC 822 little d bracketed allows states to apply for federal exemption. Iowa's Cannabis Board has recommended state action for 5 years on that processing on that process, showing how difficult it is. Olmeyer's office has reached out to me for assisting with the possible solution to help the hemp industry. Any thoughts to share an idea or insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if the federal government, if Congress does not move forward on regulating hemp, like I mentioned, you have states like Tennessee and a number of states. Texas is looking at how to regulate this. it really is going to be a question of whether the states will stand up regardless and regulate their own industries. Now, what is likely to happen in that case is that it's going to start looking in terms of conducting business. It's going to start looking a lot more like regulated cannabis. In that the credit card companies are very unlikely to process, hemp, product sales, and interstate commerce is going to suddenly become not, is going to suddenly be off the board, or at least it will be legally off the board federally, and that would be a giant risk. And so, what we will end up with is states that will regulate within their borders, like they do with cannabis, products that are created in their state. But the states aren't going to be able to regulate interstate commerce on a federally on a federally illegal product, unless they just move forward and try to do it and see if the feds stop them. But I don't see that happening. States have been, I worked on interstate commerce on the regulated market side, and states are going to be very cautious about getting their, especially state employees, involved in interstate commerce of a product that the feds have affirmatively said is not going to be federally legal. So it'll look very different. But having said that, I think, states can, and I think some states will stand up and regulate this within their borders. And so it doesn't mean necessarily the end of hemp-derived cannabinoids in regulated markets. It's just maybe going to be fewer, and it's going to be more limited.
Yeah, I know here in the state of Minnesota was interesting when they were allowing Delta 9. The number of products that I recognize from California, Oregon, Colorado, versus Minnesota products being derived here, it was insane, and I'm not sure that was really the intent.
Right.
But again, a lot of questions or issues were around that.
I mean, I would just say that was one of the interesting things about the hemp loophole, right? Because it functioned entirely outside of this whole system, and now it was suddenly, at least under the farm language law, under the Farm Bill language, federally legal. You had interstate commerce, and the speed with which that market grew, and having producers all over the country sending products all over the country, gives some indication of the potential for a normalized commercial cannabis market. And so, it's interesting. I've heard again and again that it's hard to get people to stand up for rights that they don't have, but once people lose rights, it's much easier to get them to stand up and complain. And so, we're going to see how all this feeds into, advocacy and what kind of advocacy happens. I mean, we've seen mostly advocacy from industry, and that's important. And what they have to say about revenues and jobs and economic activity is all a part of the argument. But uh, but industry has trouble being credible just because of their profit incentive, not because they're not credible people, on things like public health and safety and protecting kids. And when we see the opponents of reform, the prohibitionists, stand up, they're very happy to point at industry and saying, "Yeah, sure, you say it's safe, but your bottom line requires that you believe that." Where independent advocacy that is not profit driven, that good public policy driven, can address those questions in a much broader way, much more credibly, can bring in other, elements of civil society, whether that's clergy or law enforcement or medical professionals, and bring coalitions together around public policy. And I think that's going to be important because the legislators that vote against cannabis, it's not that no one's told them about the jobs or the revenues or the economic opportunity. It's that it's still drug policy. Right.
Yeah.
It's still cannabis. And so we're not going to win this fight by saying, look how much revenues we can look at the level of revenues we can produce or the jobs we can produce. It's an important aspect of the fight going forward. But it doesn't cover some of the key issues that have been standing in the way of this, for years. And over the last 6 or 7 years, a lot of the philanthropists that funded most of the advocacy that got this all started, that won the first, you know, half dozen or dozen states, and they looked around and said, "Oh, we're winning this. You don't need us anymore." And now there's an industry to fund all of this work. And just when the philanthropists sort of left the space to go on to fund, psychedelics or space travel or whatever it is billionaires are funding this year, um, the industry started struggling. And so one of the things that we've seen is that independent advocacy has really suffered and shrank. And I think it has put the industry in a difficult situation, without possibly, the real robust help from their strongest allies. And so, I keep coming back to, I don't know what Congress is going to do necessarily. I don't know what the administration is going to do, but I do know what is necessary to make it more likely that they will do the right thing. And to me, that is advocacy that is hand in hand between industry and groups like MPP and other organizations that are doing this, because it's the right thing to do and it's good public policy.
I have one more question before we pivot to Karen, especially because I do have some questions and then interest hearing at the state level. But I'll one last question for you, Adam, did you see or hear the Future of Hemp industry briefing hosted by ATAC, ATACH? I'm not familiar with them. Um, uh, whose panel said they did not see HR 5371 changing. How do you square that? Is ATACH and NCI MPP normal now on the opposing side of the same industry?
We're not on opposing sides, right? I mean, everybody wants to see access to, regulated legal access to cannabis and cannabinoids expanded, I believe. I mean, there are folks on the industry side. NCIA is industry, attaches industry. And again, they're not monolithic, right? There are folks in the regulated market that would like to see the entire hemp side go away entirely, and there are folks in the hemp side which would like to see the regulated market shrink into irrelevance if they sell, products from hemp. So, but I think that on the broadest sense, the responsible players on both sides want to see broadened access in a normalized commercial environment. One of the things, every coalition call that I'm on for the last 6 months, half the call is talking about how, everyone in the cannabinoid industry needs to like get together and stop, arguing against each other, and how can we present a united front. So I'm not sure that we get to a united front. I think that business interests, go in different directions. And the famous quote that it's hard to get a man to believe something whose paycheck, requires that he not believe it, or something like that. And so I think we're going to continue to see folks pushing for different pathways here. But I think that there are more likely pathways and less likely pathways, right? And I'll finish this up quickly, but I do know that when, there's a bill, the Griffith bill in the Senate came out, to, peel off non-intoxicants and begin to regulate those and allow those to get through, CBD and other cannabinoids. And the response from some folks in the hemp industry were to push back and basically say, well, no, actually, we want it to be like it was 3 months ago. We want to be able to do this and this and this and all the things we've been able to do, and that's just not going to happen, right? That's over. And
Yeah.
so I think to the extent that we get folks, backing, again, responsible regulation that is grounded in public health and safety, I think that's the path that we get to public access. And please, by all means, shift to Karen, because she's the brilliant one of this team, and has so much insight into what's going on in the States. And I appreciate you having us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to pivot now, Karen. A lot of excitement and moving parts at the federal level, but kind of same thing. A lot of moving parts within the state. There's one that you and I were talking about earlier, and then there's a question about, the state of Ohio. Are they going to live up to their this listener's comment is Ohio voters were promised, just like alcohol licensing and regulation structure. So I'm going to jump in Ohio right away.
Sure. So voters in Ohio legalized cannabis in November of 2023 in a statutory initiative, and the legislature hadn't acted on the issue and was adamantly opposed, especially the Senate. And since then, they've been considering bills to whittle away those voter enacted rights. Initially, they proposed banning home cultivation, banning passing a joint, increasing taxes. There was a ton of popular outrage, including from people that didn't even vote for legalization, just at the democratic concept that the legislature shouldn't replace its views with those of of the voters that had improved legalization. So, as part of a bill that started moving pretty quickly to clamp down on intoxicating hemp sales, the legislature approved a bill that was not quite as terrible, but still limited a lot of the voter enacted rights. It's on the governor's desk, and he said he would sign it. Among other things, it would make it a crime to possess cannabis that did not come from an Ohio retailer or from home cultivation. So Michigan borders Ohio and has cheaper cannabis. If you came in from Michigan with cannabis and they were able to prove it, you would be guilty and you would have a criminal record. Once again, it has a broad open container law. Any edibles you possess would always have to be in the original packaging. You couldn't put them in your own pill box or a jar. And it also caps the total number of dispensaries in the entire state at 400 and gets rid of the level 3 cultivators, which are small cultivators. We were very vocal in opposing the gutting of the voter initiative. Some legislators, mostly Democrats, every Democrat, I think, voted against the ultimate bill. But unfortunately, it ended up passing by a pretty wide margin and is likely to become law. There is the possibility of litigation still. There's a lawyer that wrote a law review article that said that under his reading of the history of the Constitution in Ohio, any amendments have to be in keeping with the intent of the legislature. You can't undermine or restrict the rights that were created in the statutory initiative. So it's not quite over yet. It is possible that these restrictions could be overturned in court, but unfortunately, the legislature thought that they had the authority to whittle away at some of the freedoms, and they did so.
And in regards of states that you're observing positive movement on either medical or adult
Sure.
legalization.
So the biggest one in the last year is Texas had a very, very restrictive low THC cannabis program, which we did not count as a full medical cannabis program. It is the second most populous state in the country. And this year, the legislature expanded it to allow chronic pain to qualify and to allow inhalation of cannabis through vaporization and to fairly significantly expand the number of licenses, although they're still very limited for a state of 30 million people. So in Texas, we now counted as the 40th medical cannabis state. We've also seen other states that are moving forward. In Wisconsin, the leader of the Senate has a medical cannabis bill. It has not gotten a vote yet, but it's possible that it could pass early next year. It's 2-year legislative session. We've also seen states continue to move forward on considering full legalization. In the legislative front, Pennsylvania is probably the most likely. There, for the first time ever, the House of Representatives passed a medical adult use legalization measure, but it had state-run stores, which we think is a terrible, unworkable idea given federal law. But that bill was quickly killed in the Senate, which has their own bill that does not have state-run stores. So we're hoping that next year Pennsylvania will finally legalize cannabis for adult use. And then there are a lot of other states that are still working on the issue that may take longer, but that are still, having some progress, including New Hampshire and Hawaii.
Oh, Hawaii. Yeah, no, we have a lot of relationships or clients. It's been a very disappointing.
It's the only state with a Democratic trifecta with a House, Senate, and governorship that are Democratic that has not yet legalized cannabis. And polls show that you have popular support there, but like about half of the country, there is no voter initiative process. So the only way to do it is to go through the legislature, and it's just a very onerous committee process with 4 committees in each chamber and a lot of opportunities for people that are opposed to block progress.
But earlier, you and I were talking about the fact that I think it's Maryland. They're trying to pull it back. What you want to talk about that?
Oh, Massachusetts. So Adam
Or
has been
I'm sorry,
more.
not Maryland. My apologies. Massachusetts.
And by they, so Massachusetts and Maine both had voter initiatives that MPP played a leading role in 2016, where voters approved legalization, and opponents are now collecting signatures to try to roll that back. In Massachusetts, the initiative would recriminalize the sales of cannabis, so adults could still possess it, medical patients could buy it, and it would also get rid of home cultivation. They handed in signatures and seem to have just barely crossed the minimum threshold, but some of them could still be thrown out. And I don't know if Adam, if you want to chat a little bit more about Massachusetts, but they used very underhanded tactics. There were reports people collecting signatures and lying and saying that people were signing affordable housing petitions when they were actually to legalize cannabis legalization, repeal cannabis legalization. It's very underhanded.
Interesting. No. And uh not for gosh, I have to admit I do not like getting older. It's like a thought was in my head, a question, then it's gone, and I'm looking back. But tell maybe kind of Karen, just talk about MPP a little bit. I know we've been a long time supporter since I've been involved in the industry and your organization, both monetarily and doing events like this with you. Maybe you could tell other people how they can help support your organization or the organization you are at them. And then how you guys just block and tackle on a consistent basis. And again, this industry is so hard lefts and hard rights. And I know Adam talking to him one day, he's out on the West Coast, and the next day he's down in the southern part of the state, and then he's in the East Coast.
Definitely. So obviously financial support is huge. It takes money to run a nonprofit organization. So if people go to mpp.org/donate, financial support for our work is really important. Signing up for our email alerts too, and then we can let you know when things are moving in your state. If there's plan to try to restrict voter rights or to expand them for legalization and for employment protections and all kinds of other things that we work on to expand cannabis freedom. If you sign up for our email alerts, we can let you know when things are moving in the state so you can get plugged in. In a lot of states, we have partners in those states. So, for example, in Ohio, where we were working on fighting the rollbacks of the voter initiative, we worked closely with the ACLU, with NORML, with Drug Policy Alliance, and with other folks. We ran some ads to generate emails in opposition to voter initiatives. We put in op-eds. I went and lobbied in person and testified in person, and we helped mobilize our allies to show up and to make their voices heard as well. And I see Adam has his screen on, so kick it to him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what we build campaigns, and we articulate policy, and we're a policy and campaign shop, and have been for 30 years. Karen has I can tell you, has led more successful legislative campaigns on cannabis than anyone in the country. And so we're very proud of that history, and actually getting a chance to work with Karen, who is easily the best legislative mind in the cannabis space, was one of the main reasons I was excited about taking this job. Um, so yeah, I mean, again, I talked about independent advocacy, which takes resources, right? Campaigns cost money to put together, and that's what we've done, and that's where our money goes. You mentioned a little bit Massachusetts. There's a ballot initiative that looks like it's going to make the ballot, although it's tight, and we're working to keep them off the ballot. That will end adult use sales in the state. And it seems, and the folks that are behind that are also behind a nascent effort in Maine to do the same thing next year. If these don't go well, we're going to see these in a number of states around the country. And so we will be part of the small team that is running the Massachusetts No campaign. And we're excited about that, to beat this back, but also to use that as a platform to talk about the benefits of a regulated market versus a prohibitionist illegal market. And that's what we do, and that's what we've been doing for 30 years. And we appreciate your support. And obviously, we appreciate the support of folks all over the country and companies that have stood with us and helped us to move this thing forward.
Yeah, no. Again, have enjoyed being a partner here and having the conversations around land shifts within the different states, and then even at the federal level. It's just it's interesting how there just seems to be great momentum at times, and then huge step backs, but then again opportunities throughout the U.S. to kind of keep things moving forward. So I've touched
would
on.
say,
Go ahead.
can I just add, we're in a
Yeah.
really dangerous moment. We're in a really dangerous moment, right? We're watching the backlash against the success that we've had in the last, 25 years as an issue. And because the industry is in some level of financial distress, it is an inviting target for the prohibitionists. There's a reason that we are seeing their rise and strengthening, but it's also an opportunity, right? We moved this forward to the point where it felt inevitable. Then it sort of stalled, and now there's some pushback, and now we have to make the case again for why regulated markets and legalization is far superior to prohibition. And it feels like for the first time in the last at least 5 years, the country's attention is now back on this issue and coming back to this issue, and that's an opportunity for us to really make the case and once and for all put this thing over the line. And whether that happens under this administration or the next administration, I truly believe it will. I do not think we will go back to prohibition, but this backlash that we're seeing now is sort of the normal political response to the progress we've made. And I would hope people would not be discouraged, but would see this as, okay, it's sort of the final fight we need to have. And hopefully over the next, I'd like to say hopefully over the next year, but it's unclear how this administration is going to move forward. But hopefully between this administration and whoever comes next, we're going to be able to put this thing over, get federal legalization. Right now we're still arresting 200,000 people a year around the country for possession of cannabis, which is it's just indefensible to be doing that. And so hopefully for them and for patients, but also for the industry that really needs this to be normalized, hopefully we have a chance to get there. And so let's use this moment to take the attention and make the case, because the facts and good policy is on our side.
Yeah, and then you just make me think of that. There's a lot of things that a lot of, I call it sand shifting, some good, some not so good. But one thing you just definitely make me think about is the fact that even if Trump signs the rescheduling, there's still so much work that needs to be done out there. Safe Banking Act. Something simple. That's one that seems so simple to me. Like, none of us want the cash
Right.
not running through the banking system. And then, where does Visa and MasterCard come into play with this? But interstate commerce, how does that? There's so many moving parts here. So even if there is an executive order, hopefully that does answer the 280E question for all of our clients. That, for me, that obviously I'm an accountant, CPA, but that we see that as one of the biggest challenges or issues within the industry. There's many issues, but we see that as the biggest. And if we can get that set aside, then the battle of the other subjects is a lot easier. But
yeah, the other thing 280 will do is it will, by freeing up cash, it will make the industry more able to defend itself, right? And it will free up cash to be used to do the political work. There's been so much money spent, doing the political work and trying to do banking and so on and so forth. And everyone, in the industry that I talk to, is either really struggling economically or looking at a very uncertain runway in front of them. And so hopefully 280E will give the dry powder that's necessary to put the resources behind finishing this fight. And I really believe that the end is definitely in sight. And as advocates, I got involved in this in drug policy in 1994, and there was no industry, and we couldn't even talk about things like a normalized commercial environment. We just wanted people to stop being arrested for this. But now, if we are looking at cannabis policies that are grounded in public health and safety and access, the only way to achieve that is through a normalized, regulated commercial market. And so, as advocates, we are on the side of industry, in that fight, because without a normalized commercial market, we are exactly where we came from.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, I do appreciate both Adam and Karen. I appreciate your time and your energy around this. And again, the listeners, if you could provide some support, collaboration with MPP, that would be greatly appreciated. And then again, we appreciate our partnership with you, and look forward to doing another updated webinar. So on that, Adam, good luck with the electricity, cell phone connection, getting back up and running. And Karen, stay safe. We're sending you a little more cold weather, so hold on.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much, and for your long-term partnership in this. It is vital. It is, it's leaders like you on the industry and allied industry side that make it possible for this to move forward. And so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Take care, everyone.